Hey, SlapDawg! The Brainiacs are ready!
Welcome to episode 150 of Leather Brains.
Ooh.
Your host, SlapDawg here. Welcome in. We have joined today with me, Scotty Del Rey and Alan Casanova Castro. Gentlemen, how was your Thanksgivings?
Awesome. I didn't get any scalloped potatoes, though. I was pissed.
102 pick and you blew it on scalloped potatoes.
No, scalloped potatoes are the best, but I didn't get any. Nobody brought any. We made the main dish, so I wasn't responsible for it.
Damn.
Yeti and I's families, we went out looking at Christmas lights one of these days this past week. I don't remember. Thanksgiving week end with the football games included are literally like, you don't know what day it is. You're like, Sunday I was ready for the games. I was like, wait, half of them already happened. So I'm going to watch like 2 games now this Sunday. But we went looking at lights and we were talking about the food draft because a lot of our families were interested on what some of the takes were. A lot of solidarity. A lot of us were in line with the turkey not really being taken. There was some clamoring for the green bean casserole to be higher. But that was really the only.
It was the steal of the draft.
Yeah, it was.
I
did eat that, and it was amazing.
You do without it. Nah.
I don't
In
think
fact,
you can.
I might just reduce it down to cream of mushroom soup. Might just be the best thing.
Now we're talking. Cream of mushroom soup with the
is
onions
amazing.
on top. Just cream of
that's
mushroom soup and onions, no green beans.
Yeah, but that's what green bean casserole is. With
Do you
green
taste the
beans.
green beans in the green bean casserole?
No,
Well, I don't
it's
really
just
taste it at
mushy
all. I
texture.
scarf it all down.
Could you just have the cream of mushroom soup with the crunchy things on it and still just call it green bean casserole and be done with
Put
it?
one bean in there.
It would
and I
still
think
be
you're fine.
delicious. No
A
doubt
singular
about it.
bean. I think it would be better because it's just not mushy.
Cream of mushroom soup makes everything better. You throw that on some noodles with some browned hamburger, and we call it mush, and it's the easiest meal, easy as mac and cheese, and it's delicious.
I'm not
sad I
shitting
missed-
on. Go ahead.
What?
Sorry.
You're not shitting
No,
on
I was
the
saying
food?
I'm not shitting on cream of mushroom soup. I like cream of mushroom soup.
Oh yeah, it's really good. My only thing is with Thanksgiving food, if it was better, we'd eat it year round. But I think there's a reason we only eat it once a year because it's like this takes way too damn long for things that are kind of mid.
Yeah.
in their
Well,
flavor
we just
profiles.
it was my sister's birthday over the weekend, like 2 days after we had big Thanksgiving meal, and guess what we had? Green bean casserole. Had it again because she loves it, and I also love it. It was delicious.
You had
it
a
again.
couple leftovers.
No, it was made brand new.
Shout out me. I did text your sister happy birthday, so shout out me.
I
Good work.
Doing the Lord's work.
Sorry, Matt's sister. I didn't mean to forget you, but happy belated. So I take it you guys all had a good Thanksgiving then.
Yeah.
Solid.
Good. Okay. Well, I'm assuming you guys. I agree with you, Alan. I think Thanksgiving, especially if you have the Friday off, like that Black Friday or whatever after off, it is just a glimpse at how society would function if we didn't have like a 5-day work week. Like everything becomes chaotic. Everything is like you don't know what day it is. You don't know what's going on. You have no structure. And it is nice. It's like a nice little vacation, but it quickly becomes just kind of like a blur. Like you're just I don't remember what day this happened.
It's chaotic because you want to watch all the NFL games, but now, I mean, with the all weekend you want to watch NFL games, but obviously you have the obligation to your family and your kids or whatever. Who cares about that? But because of that, you're like always in a constant state of, oh shit, I got to do something. Whether it's okay, I got 10 minutes, I got to spend some time with my kid. Hopefully, I remember their name before the next game starts, and all your whole timeline just goes right out the window.
Do you have that issue often where you forget your kids' names, Alan?
Not particularly. It depends on how drunk I get. I think that's my problem is with all of the days, like Slaps was saying, like if the work weeks were like this, if it was just like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I'm off, I would be drinking very heavily. Cause like Thursday night, I'm like, well, I don't have anything to do for like 4 days. So I might as well just start drinking because I don't have any obligations. I think that was my thing. It was just like, all right, well, let's keep drinking, I guess. Here we go.
Especially if you got to cook food. You always
Yeah.
crack beer when you're smoking stuff, and then next thing you know, it's 8 hours later, you've had an entire case of beer in the middle of the day.
I'm more
Fair.
of a whiskey guy, but I drink a good bottle of
Yeah,
it.
starting whiskey at 11 a.m. is bad news when you throw the turkey on.
That's a good day. Okay, gentlemen, I'm glad you had a good Thanksgiving. Welcome in. It's good to have you guys here. I mean, this is a monumental episode, 150. This is big
We've
stuff,
been doing this
guys.
for a long time.
We've been doing this for a very long time. So, cheers. I don't have any alcohol. I just got some water here. So, cheers to 150, and here's to another 150 more. Scotty, kick us off with the MVP of the week, my friend.
Yeah, the Leatherbrains MVP of the week is brought to you by Prime Society Luxury Leather Bags, Backpacks, and Accessories. Make sure you join athletes like Tyreek Hill and Klay Thompson by checking out primesociety.com and shopping their luxury bags, luggage, and accessories. Whether you're looking for the perfect high-quality Christmas gift that won't break the bank, or you want to turn the heads with the swagger of a pro athlete, Prime Society is your answer. Your fantasy MVP helped you secure the bag in your league, which we'll discuss in just a moment, so make sure you secure the bag with primesociety.com. Use promo code LBZ20 to get 20% off your order today. Again, LBZ20 to get 20% off your order today at primesociety.com. And now, your Leatherbrains MVP of the week is Mr. Josh Allen. 40.7 fantasy points this week. 339 yards passing with 2 touchdowns, 81 yards rushing, and 2 more touchdowns.
You know what he couldn't do, though? Couldn't win a game. Couldn't win a game, but he did win a lot of people their fantasy football games this week. I think Kyron Williams is probably also a runner-up. Yeah, a runner-up candidate for sure. He did really well and was great, but you got to give it to Josh Allen. That's why you drafted him. So congratulations to those that have Josh Allen and played him this week. And I apologize for anybody that went against him. Let's go over to studs and duds. I'll actually kick this off with my stud of the week being Jason Kelce, the one of the nominees for the sexiest man alive. That's not why he's my stud, however. I don't know if you guys I'm assuming you guys watched the Eagles game this last week, but Jason Kelce had a key block in the victory for the Eagles. It was, I didn't know a big man. Look, I'm a big man. I'm not as big as Jason Kelce, and I'm not claiming to be nearly as athletic, but this big man, Jason Kelce, like he had a very impressive block to give Jalen Hurts a running route. The defensive end had crashed, and Jason Kelce, as soon as the ball was snapped, turned and just like full sprinted and blocked the dude. It was a great block, and I'll post a clip up of it so everybody can see it. But man, very impressed with Jason Kelce. Who knew that old man could still get moving that quick? So
he's been hitting. I think this is going to be interesting to see because he's going to retire soon, probably after this year, more than likely. I know he toyed around with the idea at the end of last year, but like even if you go back to last week, the game with the Chiefs, he was like changing audibles himself. Like he does so much for that team that goes like unnoticed, and so I'm happy he made your stud of the week because he definitely does a lot that makes this offense move and hum, especially with Lane Johnson they had out this week. You know, he really had to step up and control things, and they got it moving, and that block was sick.
Yeah,
I will give you that.
It was a great
sick
block.
The Eagles' offensive line generally makes watching offensive line fun. Like that's not a normal thing. When you're a football fan, you're rarely watching the offensive line, and it's hard to take your eyes off them when the Eagles are playing. And Jason Kelce needed it because he almost cost him the game with 2 consecutive false start penalties. Yeah. That I don't know when the last time that's ever happened to him, if ever in his career, where he just kind of blew it on a couple plays that really was almost very impactful, but ended up pulling it out. And Jason Kelce doesn't look like he's lost a step. I understand why he wants to retire. It's kind of a shame though because it looks like he's still one of the best offensive linemen in the league.
Yeah, and it is also worth noting he kind of snuck out, went to the locker room for a quick poop ski before the team went to overtime. So you got to give him his sneaky little shout out there because we saw
he tried to be sneaky, but the whole camera crew just zoomed in on him because everyone thought he might be injured, but you could tell he just needed a post Thanksgiving shit before overtime.
Just
Classic.
a quick poop ski.
Relatable.
Scotty, why don't you bring us your stud of the week?
Yeah, my stud of the week is Pittsburgh without Matt Canada. For the first time in 58 games, they had over 500 yards or over 400 yards on offense. And it was the week after they fired the offensive coordinator. I think it stands to reason. Sometimes, we are just people. We don't play in the NFL. We're not really experts in anything. We just sit here and give our opinions. And sometimes we're fucking right. we've been, the entire fantasy football community has been talking shit on Matt Canada forever. And they get rid of him, and bam, all of a sudden their offense is more productive than they've been in 58 games. It's crazy.
Najee Harris actually looked good too, which was like, was he suffering from Matt Canada? Because he actually looked like what we thought what he was going to be until he like went on a milk carton and couldn't do anything. Like he actually looked good too.
Yeah, he did. I mean, here's the thing, man. Like I've not been a fan of Matt Canada. I don't think Steelers fans have been a fan of Matt Canada, and you can't argue with them getting a win against the Bengals secondary. I mean, or against the Bengals defense in general. The Bengals defense is not a terrible defense. They're not like the Browns by any stretch of the means, but they're still a formidable defense. And for them to come in and win this game, I was pretty impressed. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't great, but the numbers speak for themselves. That offense was humming. They were doing a lot better without Matt Canada there. And I'm interested to see if this continues throughout the end of the season. And now, Alan, your stud of the week.
My stud of the week is Mac Jones, and not for reasons that everybody would think he should be my stud of the week. He's my stud of the week because he likes to discover cool new like passer ratings and see how low he can go. That's why he's my stud. I think it's an art. His passer rating this past week was 27.8. And if he had just spiked all 21 passes into the ground, his QBR would have been 39.6. So he literally did worse than if he just spiked everything. So I think that's an art. I don't think many quarterbacks could pull that off. He does it. He tries it. And shout out to Bill Belichick for keep putting him in there to discover these new lows.
Well,
I'm excited.
This is a point of conversation before we get over to everybody's studs. He was benched again this week for Bailey Zappi. Like it just continues to happen, and like, why? Why?
I liked Bill Belichick's he put some magic sparkles in the conversation because everyone's talking, before this game. Okay, who's going to be your starter? And he's like, well, I just told everybody to be ready. We don't know what's going to happen. Boom, Mac Jones yet again, and then they bench him again.
here's what's going to happen. Scotty's little firing your coach or firing coordinator and winning after you do a firing is going to hold true for the Panthers. They are going to win a couple. The Patriots are going to keep starting Mac Jones as my stud. He's going to keep finding new low QBRs. They're going to backdoor their way into the number one pick. And then Belichick's going to get Caleb Williams.
Oh, that could be fun. I don't know,
man. 2 wins
there.
I think Belichick's done after this year. I think Belichick's done. I think there's going to be some conversations behind closed doors where it's going to be hey, we want you to retire, or we want you to leave, so that way it doesn't smear your resume and it doesn't make you feel bad in the public light. But we want to move on from you, Mr. Belichick. I think that is a conversation that's going to happen.
If you're Patriots ownership, would you rather have Bill Belichick tutelage with a Caleb Williams, or find a brand new coach to take over for Caleb Williams?
I guess it would depend on who that coach is.
I agree. I think if they get the number one pick, I think he stays because they can sell hope as an organization. We're going to get the number one QB with Belichick. We're going to recreate the Brady magic. Watch us go. Watch us do what we do as a Patriots team. I think that's why they're starting Mac Jones as much. I think they're tanking, very obviously.
Yeah, they've really mastered tanking, if they have, because they switch real quick from trying to win to just being absolutely garbage, just terrible. Yep. I don't know. I think Bill Belichick's gone from the Patriots pretty much for sure. You make an interesting argument, but right now I think they're in line. If the season ended today, they'd end up with probably Marvin Harrison Jr., which I don't know would help them at all.
No, that's for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
So stop talking about that. Alan, you mentioned the Panthers. They the news broke this morning that Frank Reich has been fired from the Panthers. So he didn't make it a full season with them. He did not make it a full season with the Colts last season before they fired him midseason, and now it happened to him again, but this time with the Panthers. Scotty, you have him as your stud of the week, perhaps?
No.
Or the future?
Yeah, my dud of the week is whoever takes over this role.
Okay.
Because I first of all think there's been a lot of talk about the I forget his name, but the owner of the Panthers being pretty hot on the trigger. Like he's just willing to fire whoever.
Tepper.
Yeah, Tepper.
We're calling him Tepper the Schlepper.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that, but I agree with the sentiment. Tepper, I think this was a little bit premature because this is an organization that sold everything to get Bryce Young. And Bryce Young, we don't know how good he is because this team sold everything. And they also have no future because they gave away like all of their first and second round picks for the next couple of years, as well as their best offensive weapon. So my dud of the week is whoever waltzes into this job. I think Yeti mentioned in the group chat, oh, it might be interesting if Bieniemy stepped in here. No, I don't want that. This is a lose-lose situation for whoever takes this job. It is a terrible spot. And on top of that, you have an owner who's willing to fire you after 11 games after screwing you over when they hired you.
I agree with you. I think whoever walks into that situation, it's going to be very unfavorable. But what I would be very curious to know is who's making these decisions for the Panthers? Like, truly. Like, who is it the head coach? Is it the GM? Is it ownership? Is it a medley of all of it? Because you saw what happened with Matt Rule, and you saw him kind of get pushed out. And after they sold Christian McCaffrey, who was their biggest weapon. Like, at one point in time, the Panthers had a somewhat of a formidable roster, and now it's Adam Thielen and Hayden Hurst and Miles Sanders. Like, it's just gross. It is a very unfavorable situation, but who is the person who wanted to sell the farm to get Bryce Young? That's what I want to know. Well, was it Frank Reich?
I know you like it when I use big words, so I'm going to use one here. This is a cacophony of utter incompetence. These guys are all a bunch of morons, and I think it's a group decision and led by Tepper. I mean, Tepper, like I said, he's been under fire recently because people have been looking at him. I guess he's got a brass statue of testicles on his desk that he just keeps out. Like, I don't know if it's supposed to be like an intimidating thing. Like, that's the kind of person this guy is. He just seems a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. The Panthers aren't in a favorable spot, but like it makes me think that it's not the head coach's fault. Like, truly, like, I do think perhaps it is Tepper. I'm not sure. But I can't sit there and blame the head coach because the same thing happened with Matt Rule.
Yeah, I think you hear it all the time. Like, you need the front office. There's a reason why whenever any like major sports team wins anything, they'll always give credit to the front office. Couldn't do it without the front office. Think about doing any of our jobs that we're in, but your boss is like just awful. It makes it much more difficult for you to do anything productive if your boss is working against you, making decisions that aren't right, or basically not saying no. Like, let's say Reich really wanted Bryce Young, and well, you just fired the guy that really wanted him. So now what are you doing? You should have like just went with your gut and said, hey, this is probably the best direction. So there's a little bit of everything. Everybody has a share in it, but the front office, I mean, ownership, GM, everything all the way down to the coach has to be in lockstep. Otherwise it looks like it does now. And then the fans want to blame everybody. And going really quick back to what Matt had said. So your Leather Brains word of the week brought to you by Merriam-Webster's dictionaries. Cacophony, a harsh, discordant mixture of sounds. That is your Leather Brains word of the week, cacophony.
Yeah, I kind of used it in more of a, here's another one, colloquial. I kind of used it in more of a colloquial way, which is more of like a informal kind of context as opposed to the exact definition.
Hey, Alan, can you put that down for next week, and we'll make that the word next week, so that way anybody who doesn't know what it means, they're going to have to wait till next week to figure out what that word means.
Yeah.
We need to learn a bit more words.
Yeah.
Matt is running laps around us.
He is, making us look like the idiots that we are. Alan, your dud of the week, buddy.
Dud of the week for me, Deontay Johnson. If you've seen any of the clips that are out there, he had just one of the weirdest plays I've ever seen of somebody that just like didn't give a shit. There was a run play that they ran off to the left towards Deontay Johnson's side with Warren, and he falls. And if you look in the background, Deontay Johnson isn't even really blocking anybody. He just kind of like is in the way. He made it like a little bit more. He just was like kind of like a bump in the road. If somebody had to go around him, was probably like the best way to describe what he was doing. And then there's a fumble, and he's not paying attention, and he looks at it, and then they're running the other way, and he just kind of turns around and stares at him and watches them run the other way and doesn't really do anything. It was one of the more wild sequences I've ever seen. And this was on the heels of reports of Deontay Johnson fighting with the team, yelling at people, getting
You
all
remember
up in arms
just-
about stuff.
Was it last year when he punched Mitch Trubisky in the locker room? Like this is like becoming a thing where he's just fighting everyone in the locker room.
Yeah, not
there
a
was
great look. He had
there
a good
was
game, but
reports.
that clip.
Yeah, there was reports that Minkah Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt had to like break up whoever he was fighting with and like yell at the team and be like, we need to stick together as a team. So Deontay Johnson might be a locker room issue. Like he might be like a team, not a team guy, you know?
I was listening to another podcast today, and the guy on it is a big Steelers fan, and he was like, I am so done with Deontay Johnson. Like, all he does is cause problems. I don't want him on this team. I don't want him anywhere near the team. So it sounds like Steelers fans are getting pretty fed up with it. And this play was ridiculous. I think the best way to describe it is he looked like when a team is running an offense out of Wildcat and they send the quarterback over to like the wide receiver position off by the sideline. And he's like, oh, I'm not actually going to do anything. I'm just a distraction. Like that's what he did on this play. He just stood there and watched the ball fumble right by him.
Shame on you, Deontay Johnson. My dud of the week is late hits. There was a late hit that I believe should have been called. The refs missed another hit. This one was on Justin Herbert in last night's game. He was running out of bounds. I was watching it live, and I audibly went, oh, my God. And then they slow-moed it. And it didn't look as bad as it did in real time, but it still definitely was a late hit, and it should have been called, and it was not called, which then further elevated the entire situation because then the team... I don't remember which Chargers player it was. It might have been Gerald Everett went and was fighting with one of the opposing team members, which then got a penalty flag and then pushed him back out of touchdown range, and then that caused him to kick a field goal. So like everything that could have went wrong there, but the refs missed a late hit that I have no idea how when you're watching that, you even in a replay, you don't call that. That to me was an egregious late hit, and shame on those refs for not calling that.
Yeah, I cannot believe they didn't throw a flag. They got so royally screwed in that little sequence, and it was one of the more obvious like late hits on a quarterback that you'll see. He was a good, almost a yard out of bounds before he got touched.
I want to do this really quick because Slaps, you hit on a really good point because it's like it seems like one thing, and then everybody will say like, oh, but there was so many other things, but like. That dictates so much the cause and effect after that. It's like the butterfly effect, like the things that happen thereafter. It's almost like when on a last second drive, the DB drops what would be a game ending interception and then they give up a touchdown. Like it's those little things that like truly dictate because the margin for error in these NFL games is so freaking slim that everybody wants to be like, oh, it's not the refs. Oh, it's not this. Oh, that doesn't matter. Like, it all matters. Like all these little things add up to the end. And then you're like, here we are. They say it's a game of inches. Well, if you're giving away 15 yards for no reason, that's many inches. I don't know if we want to do the math on that, but it's many inches. But I think it's a great dud because I think we're seeing that more and more, whether they call it or don't call it. These things are truly affecting the game.
And that one, like, I've seen the flags thrown for way less, and so that was really what like it just. I'm not a Chargers fan. I don't care if the Chargers win or not, but like for the sake of fairness conversation, I just watched that and was just like, that's bullshit. Like why are you not throwing that? And then you have time to look at the replay and you still look at that play and then you say, nope, that wasn't a late hit. It's like. How on God's green earth is that fair? So I felt for Chargers fans and Justin Herbert, and I just think that was BS, and I don't think that was fair for that not to be called. So that's my dud of the week. And now let's get over to the Leatherbrains game of the week. It's got to be the Eagles-Bills, gentlemen. I mean, there is absolutely no other game that was this electric, this close, and this meaningful as this Eagles-Bills game. So obviously I think most NFL fans were watching this game, but the Eagles win this game 37-34, and it was on a walk-off 12-yard touchdown in overtime from Jalen Hurts. So Josh Allen is now 0-6 in overtime games. We can blame him, we can blame the defenses, but I think really, and if we want to go down that road for the conversation, we can, but I also I want to point out that this is the end of the Bills season. Effectively, I don't know the statistics for their playoff berth, but I know it's under 50% and it's not looking good.
Yeah, it's under 25% now, and they still have to play the Chiefs and the Cowboys, both in their own, or not their home stadium, so in the Chiefs Stadium and the Cowboys Stadium. So they basically, I think, to really have a shot, I think they at least have to win 4 out of the next 5 games, and they've got some tough ones.
They end the season with, so they get a bye, then they're at Kansas City. They have the Cowboys, Chargers, Patriots, Dolphins to end it. So they
could
have
do
to
it.
They could, but they pretty much have to win all of them.
Yeah,
they pretty much have to win them all because it's such a logjam in the AFC that teams are just, it's going to be tough sledding. I mean, you have the Colts in there right now. Like, there's just teams that are just sliding around. This is a bad year to have a rough year because there isn't that bottom of the AFC. And if you're a Bills fan, I mean, you look at the season, you look at what you had coming into it. The Chiefs aren't what the Chiefs were 2 years ago, even last year to some degree. And then you look at the Bengals, Burrow's out, so you're looking around the AFC, you're like, hey, now's our time. We don't have anything to worry about. It's us, the Ravens, we can beat the Ravens. And then you're out here pulling the season you're having. It's just like a shit time to do it for Bills if you're a Bills fan, because this is ripe for the picking AFC time right now.
Yeah, I will say that Josh Allen is responsible for a lot of their problems this season. Obviously, I've talked extensively about the defensive issues that they've had. They've lost a ton of starters on defense, but Josh Allen has been a turnover machine. He was not the reason they lost this game. He played I think he had one bad play, threw an interception, but outside of that, he played damn near perfect football this game and was electric to watch. He's not the reason they lost, so it's good to see him at least appear to kind of get back to the Josh Allen that we like to see.
Yeah. Two key points in this game that I want to talk about really quickly that we talked about small things become big things. One, it's obviously a big thing, but Elliott hitting that 59-yard field goal in the rain, it's windy, pressure's on him. That field's been beat up from them playing the whole time. Like, it was a ridiculous, and he had room to spare on that one. So that is one.
Yeah.
But then the Bills get the ball. They have 20-ish seconds left. They have a timeout, and they kneel it.
Yeah, they should have had 2 timeouts.
Yeah,
I think they did have 2.
No, they burned one trying to ice him.
One. Yeah, they burned one trying
which
to
was
ice
very
on the
stupid.
field goal. Yeah, just you keep the 2. You have the 20 seconds. You could have gone. You have Josh Allen. He's playing out of his mind. The Bills fans, all the writers talked shit how Josh Allen didn't get the ball in overtime against the Chiefs. Why didn't he get the ball in overtime? He should get a chance to score. And then you have a chance at the end of the game to actually go and try to score, and you sit on it. You freaking sit on it. That coaching decision was unreal. They did this to themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a couple questions here. I mean, we all know that the Chiefs would have went for it. They would have sent Patrick Mahomes out there with 20 seconds, tried to get in field goal range, and finish that game. Like, there's no question in my mind, and I'm sure for you guys that's the same verdict. Where do the Bills go from here? Like, none of us are Bills fans here, so just looking at the team, like the Commanders, we can look at the Commanders and say they need a better offensive line. Let's see what they can do. Where do the Bills go from here as a team in order to still try and compete?
Here's the problem you have if you're a Bills fan, or if you're the Bills front office for that matter. At the end of the season, you are in the hole $30 million in cap space. You don't have any. This is, you basically, with the money you have, said, we are all in. We are trying to win right now. And that was very obvious with how they signed, the players they were keeping, things they were holding on to. They're saying, this is our moment. We are doing it. So they don't even have cap space to go out and do anything. They need to shed some of this weight, which might not be a bad thing, because sometimes change can be for the better. But if you're a Bills fan, you're really, really looking at that clock, because there's a lot of good young AFC talent. There's a lot of good young quarterbacks. There's a lot of bumps in the road, which the Bengals experienced one with CJ Stroud. You have all these teams trying to rebuild and regroup, coaching changes. Like, your window is very small in the NFL. And I don't know if the Bills have very much longer. This might be it, because they're going to have to make some changes, and they have to create cap space and get rid of some people.
Do you think they're going to go under what we would deem as a light rebuild?
I think, yeah, they're going to have to if they want to change the way things going. Because even last year to end the season, it's not like they were competitive against the Bengals in that game at home.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's any given Sunday. We've said that a lot, but also it's just how much team makeups change year over year and how that really truly does affect the rest of the NFL. Going into this year, like the Bills were touted as one of the, the heavy hitter contending kind of people. And here we are, and they have less than a 30% chance to make it to the playoffs. So that's how quickly things can change in the NFL. And I think a lot of people don't really fully understand that. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that because it's happening in front of our eyes right now. And the Bills next year could be a middle of the pack team at best, depending upon how this roster, what this roster carryover looks like going into next season. That is a potential. So it's just worth noting, and it is interesting because that's not how I wanted to see the Bills season end. I want a Bills Mafia to be smashing tables and at least be in the playoff conversation, and right now it's not looking promising. So
it'll be extra electric if they make it, though.
It will indeed. Thanksgiving, guys. We had 3 games on Thanksgiving. I really want to talk about the Packers versus the Lions because the Packers upset the Lions 29-22. Scotty, you have been an apologist. I don't know if that's a word or not, but it sounds...
It's a word, but it's the wrong word.
Well, you have apologized to Dan Campbell a couple times, so okay. We'll say you've been an apologist of Dan Campbell.
Colloquialism.
Colloquialism. It's hard for me to defend Dan Campbell today. It really is. It was hard for me to defend him on Thanksgiving. I don't know what going for it on 4th down within your own 20-yard line in the third quarter does for you. Very clearly, it doesn't win you games. So that is a really tough play call for me to get behind. I didn't agree with it. I'm a pseudo Lions fan this season. For anybody that doesn't know, that was really difficult for me. I thought the Lions should have won this game pretty handily. I think some things really got out of hand very quickly for the Lions, and it was hard for them to try and come back. Jared Goff, he did not look good in this one. He had 3 fumbles, lost all 3 of them. Do you gentlemen think that there's any possibility that Hendon Hooker, this is the quarterback that the Lions drafted in the 3rd round this last draft, he tore his ACL prior to entering the NFL, so we haven't got to see him all year, so he really wasn't even competing for a starting spot. But do you think that there's any possibility that Hendon Hooker might make an appearance next season as a starting quarterback?
Next season? Yeah, I'd say there's a possibility. I mean, it's crazy how quickly we forget. Jared Goff has been playing out of his mind this season.
Yes.
He's had 2 consecutive games now with a bunch of turnovers that have been bad. They got out with a win last week, but this week they weren't so lucky. But overall, over the course of the entire season, Jared Goff has been very good. So I think if he's able to pull it back together, we know this Lions team is talented on both sides of the ball. They're able to win games. It's just they can't give the ball away, 3 and 4 times a game and expect to win. That's just not how things work in the NFL. So if we see Jared, I think there's a good chance the Lions make a very solid offseason run, or a postseason run, and Jared Goff's going to be a big part of that. So it'll be a conversation for next year. But the turnovers are obviously unacceptable, but it's not something. I don't think it reflects badly on Jared Goff this season because he has been so good. As far as the bad call, this is just what Dan Campbell's been doing, and he's pulled off some crazy 4th down conversions, and he in this case, did not do it. And I really do think that it's an emotional problem for him. I think he's a very emotional guy. I think he gets so invested in the narrative, and he doesn't think clearly, and that's why he's making these questionable decisions. And this one's just unacceptable. You just can't do that when you're already struggling. Put yourself further in the hole. It's just Dan Campbell, man. That's just who he is.
I love him, but I can't defend that. We're talking about quarterbacks and the switches, so let's pivot on to the other side of this conversation, the Packers. I've seen some murmurs that Jordan Love is not the future for the Packers organization. I've seen people saying, he's not it. Let's move on. There's an interesting stat kind of floating around, and I think we had even posted it on our socials. So let me pull it up here very quickly. It is the Matrix, gentlemen. We're living in it. So Aaron Rodgers had 2,599 passing yards and 21 total touchdowns through his first 11 games as a starter. Jordan Love has literally the exact same numbers in his first 11 games as a starter. So I just bring all this up. I've seen a lot of Jordan Love isn't it. Jordan Love is not the future of the Packers organization. I just wanted to ask you guys what you think, because he's got the same metrics as one of the greats through his first 11 games. And granted, he's not a rookie, but are we treating him as a rookie, and how do we see his career going forward?
I think my opinion on this is that he looks to be the part right now. He appears that he can make some of the throws. They've even done side-by-side comparisons of him and Aaron Rodgers doing like their little drop back and how like the arm angle changes and how they sling it around. And I think he's not the reason he's the reason they're winning some of these games and staying in some of these games just as much as that defense. And I think at the beginning of the year, it was flipped. It was like, he's not really winning us games. He's just trying not to lose them. I'm optimistic. I think if you're a Packers fan, you have to be more optimistic than you were to start the season and through the first few weeks. Now he will get another test on the next Sunday night. The Chiefs will be in Green Bay to play. I think that will be another big test for him. I fully expect him to show out. If you remember, didn't he come in when Rodgers was hurt? Was it last year, the year before with in Kansas City? And he didn't look great, but again, that wasn't really his team. That was Rodgers' team. That was not, he wasn't getting the first team reps, like that, just a terrible spot to be in. And I'm interested to see how he shows up this Sunday, but I fully expect him to be their guy moving forward because he certainly looks the part. He protects the ball. He takes risks when he needs to, and throwing for over 250 yards and 3 touchdowns against a Lions defense that was pretty heralded as like, hey, we're going to shut some shit down. Like, pretty optimistic if I'm a Packers fan.
Yeah, I don't understand. I've seen the same, kind of murmurs throughout, NFL fans saying that Jordan Love isn't the guy. I personally don't understand how you can come to that conclusion. This is the youngest offensive unit in the league. I mean, it's not like he has any veterans to lean on. All of his pass catchers are young. He's inexperienced. I think you have to give him more time, and there's certainly reasons to be optimistic, like Alan said. I do not think you can write him off yet. I think he's given you enough to be excited about it, and you have to let this team, sort of mature together, and they haven't really had that opportunity just through the short season so far. So we'll have to see how things go. As far as next week goes, it's tough to get a win in Lambeau, and if they can come out and play good offense, they could very well win that game. And I think maybe the conversation about Jordan Love would be drastically different if that happens.
Yeah, I tend to agree with both you guys. I just wanted to pick your brains because that's been a conversational piece throughout the NFL landscape in the last couple of weeks, and I think it was worth addressing. So while we're talking about dressing, let's talk about addressing the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not a Dallas Cowboys fan. In fact, I don't like the Dallas Cowboys, but they continued to roll in what is named a snooze fest this last week against the Commanders. They beat them 45-10. So it's looking that Dallas is pretty dang likely that they're going to make the playoffs. They're currently 8-3. But my question to you, gentlemen, is Dallas, are they legitimate Super Bowl contenders at this point? Because all Dallas fans are going to say is, yes, absolutely, we're there. But we know Dallas, and Dallas historically tends to shoot themselves in the foot at some point. Is it going to happen again this year?
I think so. I put a note in here in our show notes that said Dallas equals the Dolphins. I think they very clearly beat up on lesser teams. When I was having a conversation with a family member who's a big Eagles fan, so you know where their thoughts were with this Dallas team. But one of the things I brought up to him is like, if you watch the Dallas game, they typically will score in bunches late. Either the game's over or they're coming back from a deficit and they score a bunch of points and make it interesting. And it kind of tilts the scale on how the game looks. Because if you look at this game if you just look at the scores, 45-10. Wow, you blew out the Commanders 45-10. At the end of the third quarter, it was 20-10. It was only a 10-point game. And then they just kind of went on a fury at the end, like a little flurry scoring at the end of the game, and got a pick six, got some long touchdown passes. But even further drilling into the total yards, it was fairly even. Like, the Commanders were able to move the ball. The Cowboys could move the ball, but I think what you're going to see, and this happens to the Dolphins this year, is when they play somebody with equal talent, they can't overcome some of their deficiencies they have as a team. They just make some dumb mistakes. They do some stupid shit, and it's okay in this game because it's a lesser team, but I don't trust them in the playoffs. I would not trust them against any of the top teams in the NFL. They might win a playoff game depending on how the draw works and who they get, but I wouldn't trust them beyond maybe a divisional win.
And I think this game, continues to say a lot about how good Dallas's defense is. And it goes exactly with the narrative what you just said, where, okay, maybe the offense struggles a little bit to start the game, whatever, but then, they start to figure out that defensive scheme and they can score points. And every team's like that in the NFL. As you're playing the game, you can make those adjustments. You can find weak spots. Maybe there's a player or two that gets injured and now you have a key target on offense that you want to go after. And Dallas's defense just doesn't seem to give that up very often. So they will keep them in it and they'll keep them interesting. It's really going to come down to, okay, if Dallas can get a couple, defensive scores or key turnovers, which they've clearly been able to do, and Dak doesn't give the ball back, at that point in time, it's a very formidable team. So it's really going to come down to Dak Prescott and this offense not blowing the game and the defense holding strong like we know that they can. But at this point in time, it's the same thing with the Dolphins. You can make the criticism, oh, they haven't beat anybody good yet, but we've seen enough on the field to know that what this team's capable of and what their identity is, and they're certainly capable of making a Super Bowl run. It's just a matter of if they put it all together.
Dallas plays Seahawks, Eagles, Bills, Dolphins, Lions, and then the Commanders again. So there's some games sprinkled in there that I think are really going to show us a little bit more of what the Cowboys are made of, especially the Eagles and the Bills games. Those are two games that I'm really interested to see, as well as the Dolphins game. I think could get really interesting because it's going to be an offensive game. I mean, that's what the Dolphins do. Their defense is not as good as their offense is, and so that's going to be kind of interesting to see how this game unfolds. I don't think the Dallas is Super Bowl contender. I think they're certainly playoff worthy, and they will go to the playoffs, and they could even make a half decent playoff push. I don't see them going to the Super Bowl, however. So, just wanted to hash that out a little bit here. And next thing up here is the Texans' heartbreaking loss. This was a really good game, gentlemen. It was the Texans-Jags. The Jaguars win this game 24-21. I really wanted to see the Texans win this game, but unfortunately, they did not. There's just a couple things here that I wanted to touch on. For fantasy football players, Dameon Pierce, he came back from injury this week, and he logged 5 carries with an 18% snap count. So all of this is to say that Devin Singletary, this is his backfield, and I do believe it will be his backfield for the remainder of the season, barring any injury. So I just wanted to note that. If you have Dameon Pierce, I'm sorry, but I think it's Devin Singletary's season. So wanted to point that out. And then just another ancillary note is both T-Law and Stroud are young guys. They're both young quarterbacks in the AFC, as well as Anthony Richardson. So these are the Colts, Texans, and Jags are all AFC South teams. Anthony Richardson, obviously rookie quarterback that got injured and is out for the rest of the season. Is the AFC South looking to be a powerhouse division for years to come, in your guys' opinion? I mean, like this could be a pretty fun little conference that we have building around here. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. I like good football. I want to see some good football. As a Chiefs fan, I obviously want them to run the AFC, but I like good football. So, Trevor Lawrence, he's been like a really interesting case study this season. This offense has been just in spurts. Sometimes they look awesome, and sometimes they just can't figure out what the hell is going on. So that's going to be interesting as things move forward. But I am as optimistic as ever for CJ Stroud. I think he has proven now that he is a quarterback of the future, and he is going to be around for a long time, and he has really elevated this team. And by the way, it's tough to say, but Tank Dell is incredible, and I don't know how much of that is quarterback play and just their relationship, or Tank Dell might just be a phenom, but man, watching those two guys play football is so much fun.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how much these two teams continue to invest, because you've seen this where teams will pop up, but then it's like the front office. We just started talking about the front office. The front office then doesn't either make that move to put them over the edge or doesn't feel like spending to put them over the edge. And then they end up in this weird, like, purgatorial area where they're just like, I'm kind of good. I'm not really good. Maybe we'll make the playoffs. Maybe we won't. But I think having Stroud come in and play as well as he is too, I think you could see in this game that the Jaguars wanted this one. They had to have it, right, to keep control. And I think that's what makes good divisions great, is that they get good players, they're contenders, they sharpen each other up, and then you have what you have. Like, they just produce great products. And so I'm hopeful. I think it's fun. I think it'll be fun. I think the AFC South's kind of been in this rut for a while, ever since like Luck retired and you had all this turnover within the conference. So it'll be interesting. But I think the two young guys, and then you mentioned Anthony Richardson, and I think that's spot on because he was showing something. He has to stay healthy. Old adage, you can't make the club in the tub. So availability is the best ability, and he needs to show that, because he took some hits, and that's kind of his MO. If he can't take them, then that's going to take a big piece of his game away.
Agree completely.
Yeah, I'm sad because the Broncos keep winning games.
You fucked this for everyone. I want to point that out.
I really did.
You're
This
an
is like the
idiot.
second big blunder in just a few weeks that I've made by saying stupid shit on the podcast, and then it just happens. Like, dude, I just don't get it. So when I watch the Broncos, I still don't see a very good football team. Like, I don't know if I'm alone on that, but I'm watching them. They obviously look a lot more, a lot cleaner, making fewer mistakes, but it's not like this offense is going crazy. I mean, just in this game, granted, they had to play a tough defense, but, Russ threw for 134 yards. Javonte saw 18 carries for only 65 yards. Jerry Jeudy is irrelevant. Sutton had 3 receptions. Like, it's not like they're blowing stat lines out, but they're finding ways to win these games. And obviously, they've won some tough ones, beating the Bills and beating the Chiefs. Like, they're finding ways to win these games. For me, the most impressive thing that I've seen out of Denver is the turnaround that we've seen out of their defense. We talked just a few weeks ago that they had a different turnaround that was way worse, from last season to the beginning of this season. We're like, what the hell happened? And they all of a sudden figured it all out. They're allowing only 16 points on average over the last 5 games, which you can win in the NFL if you're only giving the other team 16 points. So that's huge. And I'm interested to know what your guys' thoughts are. Is this just them, remembering how to play football, or is Sean Payton finally starting to have a real impact on the team?
He's a scumbag.
I knew that's what you were going to say as soon as you said Sean Payton. Okay, you look, I will give them this. You're right on the defense. They're playing opportunistic football. I believe Mahomes said it in an interview when he was doing on the Manning cast on one of the Monday night games. They are asking him, it was the Broncos-Bills Monday night game where they beat Josh Allen. And they asked him, they said, what's the difference in this Broncos team that you saw on defense? And Mahomes said, they simplified things. It wasn't anything crazy. What Mahomes was seeing was coming, but the guys were playing fast. They were playing downhill, and they were being aggressive, and they were playing opportunistic. They're almost like the Iowa Hawkeyes of the NFL. They're not really doing a ton on offense, just like you mentioned, Scotty. They're not doing a ton, which is hard to do in the NFL and continue to win games because NFL is all about the offense. But you look at how this defense is playing. The offense is playing complementary football. They're not turning it over. Russ is taking care of it, taking shots when he needs to, holding it when he needs to, and not putting their defense in bad spots. And that's a recipe for success. And I think the Chiefs turned the ball over a lot. The Bills turned the ball over a lot. They got Josh Dobbs to turn the ball over. This week was a little bit, I assumed they were going to win this week since there was a DTR was the starter for the Browns, and then he ended up getting hurt, and Myles Garrett was hurt. So it was like a litany of injuries for them there. But coming up, they get the Texans next with CJ Stroud. Texans are playing well. Then they get the Chargers, Lions, Patriots, Chargers again, and they end with the Raiders. So they're going to get a good sled of teams that have decent coaching, except for the Chargers, and they're going to figure out ways, to kind of poke at this team. Because the other thing is, we talk about this. I think last year we did too with some of the quarterbacks that come in mid-season. The other thing is, you got to get more film on this Broncos team. If they've made some significant adjustments, you got to get more film on them, just like the Bears did last year where they made some adjustments with Justin Fields and it kind of popped off for like 4 weeks. Well, NFL is always about once you get on tape, once you have tendencies, then they will figure you out. And I think the Broncos are benefiting from a little bit of that, a little bit of injuries, and a little bit of just like the defense just on a heater right now.
I will say this. If you are playing fantasy football with defenses, you should be starting anybody that goes against the Browns. That is my recommendation to you because the Browns right now are... I started the Broncos this last week, and I'm very glad that I did. It got me double-digit points. Like, it was a great turnaround. The Browns are not in a good spot. They, as you mentioned, Myles Garrett, he was seen in a sling. He's out. Their quarterback is out. Amari Cooper is out. Like, and it's just not a good look for the Browns. It sucks. The Browns have been ridden with injury, but I would be very excited to start any defense against them because they're playing with what is now their third-string quarterback, and they have nobody. So start defenses that are going against Browns. I think it'll be very fruitful for anybody that does so.
That is a good call. And staying in the AFC West, wanted to talk about a couple of wide receivers. One, Slaps, I know you had mentioned previously, and over the last 2 weeks, he's really come along. And another for the Chiefs. But in a game where we're all looking at Kelsey Mahomes, what are they going to do? The Chiefs had McKinnon out. The Chiefs had Tony out. Hardman's on IR. the Raiders turning it around. They look good against Miami. Probably should have won that game. Aiden O'Connell settling in. You got Devontae Adams. Their tight ends, they were using their tight ends a lot. And out of this game, which was back and forth, Chiefs kind of pulled away at the end, but you saw two wide receivers that I think a lot of people have been clamoring for finally showed up on tape, finally showed up in production, and that is Rashee Rice and Jacoby Myers. Rashee Rice had 8 receptions, 107 yards, and a touchdown. Jacoby Myers had 6 receptions, 79 yards, and a touchdown. Now, Rashee Rice was benefiting a little bit from the injury bug that I aforementioned. And for Jacoby Myers, if you look at the games previous, last game he had 4 receptions. The games prior to that, he was averaging like a reception a game. And Slap, shout out to you for saying, hey, pick this guy up. You can get him for cheap, because now you're starting to see that come to fruition with how he's starting to pay off on this offense. And if you fast forward and kind of look ahead, as we always like to do, whether it's this season or you look at dynasty formats, these are 2 interesting components to these teams that could be a part of their, long-term success. Obviously, Rashee Rice is a rookie, so he'll be around for a while. But even Jacoby Myers, like they tried to take Devontae Adams out of the game, and Devontae got his, but Aiden O'Connell seemed to be settling in with Jacoby Myers. And when you're looking at the fantasy schedule right now, if you're rostering him and you're kind of wavering, it's something to keep note, because as more and more teams cue in on Devontae, Jacoby's starting to show up as a reliable target that can get them the yards. He made a tremendous over-the-shoulder catch late in that Chiefs game. He was very productive. They were making a concerted effort to get him the ball, not only over the middle, but even giving him stuff out of the backfield and little designed routes to get him on the edge. And Rashee Rice, finally, if you're a Chiefs fan, you're like, thank you, God, because MVS can't catch shit. Sky Moore can't catch shit. Kelsey's, I don't know if he's getting a little bit older.
We all are every day.
If we're starting to see the wear and tear on him finally, so the Chiefs really needed somebody else to step up and be a threat. And Rashee Rice had like 37-yard, 34-yard touchdown pass, so he's shown the home run threat ability. So for me, out of this game, what was impressive to me was if you're looking at options moving forward, or you're kind of like, okay, I've been sitting on these guys, and I think it might be the time to start them is now. I really think it's time. I think you're starting to see these guys shine. I think you're starting to see them pop on film. The coaches will see it, and I really hope that this is the more to come for these 2 guys, because I think they're 2 very viable options, especially like long-term formats. I think if you're looking to get into something where they're kind of still on the basement, kind of ground floor level, I think it now is kind of the time. But I'd love your guys' thought if you watched the game on how these 2 guys played.
Yeah, well, I just want to say something about Jacoby Myers first, because he's someone we've kind of touched on quite a few times over the course of the season. And we saw him, he came out of the gates explosive right away with Jimmy G. Jimmy G loved Jacoby Myers, and even now he's the top 20 wide receiver in PPR leagues. He's averaging over 14 points a game. So he's not someone, I think he's been in at least flex consideration pretty much every week. And obviously, when you're talking about wide receiver 2s and flexes, you have boom weeks and bust weeks. But Jacoby Myers is someone that I've got rostered in several leagues, and he is one of my key flex guys. Like I'm putting him in all the time, because with Devontae Adams on that team, the defenses are leaving Jacoby open, and he is making the plays. He is getting open. So I'm a big fan of Jacoby Myers this season. I think he might be maybe the only player to ever go to the Raiders organization and get better at football, because usually that's the opposite of what happens, but we'll take it as fantasy managers. And then as a fellow Chiefs fan, I agree with you. Rashee Rice has to be a key part of this offense, because especially with some of the slow offensive play that we've seen, not being able to score in the second half, a great way to get that motor running on offense is to, first of all, keep Pacheco involved, which they've done a pretty bad job of that. Pacheco needs to see at least 15 carries a game, in my opinion. And then when you're trying to get that passing game going, you have receivers dropping the ball, whatever, that's the perfect time to set up slants and screens to your best player in space, which is Rashee Rice on the Chiefs. You need to make high percentage throws to this guy in the flat and let him make moves and get the offense going. We saw that this week, and that needs to be a key component of the game plan going forward for the rest of the season.
Here's my concern with Jacoby Meyer. I was in redraft formats. He was a buy low candidate for me weeks ago. Unfortunately, trade window has closed in redraft formats for most leagues. Here's my concern with Jacoby. Rashee Rice, I'm fine. The issue with Rashee Rice is, for dynasty purposes, he's going to be expensive. He's a rookie. He's tied to a really good quarterback, and it seems as if he could be a leading candidate for receptions. So Rashee Rice is going to be expensive. Jacoby Meyer is probably, his price is continuing to elevate, which is fine. But let's look at I think I would sell him in Dynasty. And the reason being is because you mentioned this earlier. Devontae Adams is getting a lot of looks, which opens it up for Jacoby Meyer, right? Like Devontae Adams, he is a wide receiver one. He's a very talented route runner. He is getting the top coverage in a defense. Is Devontae Adams going to be around next year? That's a question we have to be asking ourselves, and all signs indicate that he won't be. He's asked to be traded. He wants out. He's been spotted with Aaron Rodgers, and whether that happens or not is a conversation in and of itself. But the bottom line is Devontae Adams doesn't want to be here. And the Raiders are, we said this at the beginning of the year, the Raiders are going to be going under a rebuild because they don't have a lot of pieces. They have some pieces, but they don't have enough to actually get competitive. So let's burn the whole fucking house down and let's build anew. Let's sell Devontae Adams. He's an aging asset. He's not going to be in the league a whole lot longer, and he still carries intrinsic value. You sell Devontae Adams. You're not going to sell Jacoby Myers because you need somebody to catch the ball, and now he becomes the de facto wide receiver one. That sounds juicy. That sounds great. But the issue being is, can he handle top coverage from defenses on a lackluster offense? That is where I'm concerned at. So for redraft formats, if your trade deadline hasn't been moved yet, yeah, Jacoby Myers I'm all in on. But for dynasty purposes, I'd probably be looking to sell in the offseason before everything that I just mentioned actually happens, because I think it's likely that it does.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. But one thing I can't figure out is the Chargers. I don't get it. I watch this team. I look at Keenan Allen. I look at all that Justin Herbert has been hyped up to be throughout his career in the NFL. And I look at Austin Eckler, and I'm like, dude, this is an offense that should be scoring a shitload of points. And, I'm not necessarily surprised at the record, but I am surprised at the way in which they are coming across these losses. Because if they were losing every game in a shootout, that would make sense to me, because you got Brandon Staley, who seems to be totally incompetent. You have a defense that can't do anything, but you have a lot of great offensive weapons, and your window is significantly closing. Like it is almost shut, because all of your offensive weapons, who are very good, are also pretty old. And I am just so surprised at the lack of productivity with this offense. So I know we've been asking this question, and everyone's been asking this question for forever. Is this a Justin Herbert problem? I mean, is he not allowing this offense to move in the way that they should be?
No, I think it's a Brandon Staley problem. I really do. At this point, I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree that there are things that he needs to do. But you look at Justin Herbert as a raw product. A raw product as a talent of a quarterback in the NFL. He is a talented individual. I think it comes down to coaching. If you can't coach that out of him, you're not sitting there saying, hey, I need you to throw it 10 yards shorter, or hey, I need you to throw it an extra 25 yards, or I need you to do this. You are talking about things that can and should be coached out of a person. So I don't want to blame Justin Herbert here. I want to blame poor play calling and poor coaching of an individual as far as Justin Herbert's lackluster success. That's my look at it.
I have my thoughts on Herbert. I think for as much fanfare and fodder as he gets, he also gets a lot of passes, I feel like, and not actual football passes. No, it's okay. It's the quarterback.
He's throwing them.
No, it's okay. It's the quarterback. No, or it's the coach. No, it's the system. No, he doesn't. But you look at the weapons he does have around him, and they were calling plays, and you can only run what was called, and yada yada yada. I get that. I really get that. But that's a lot of weapons for one guy to have. And I know they've been hurt. I know they have their issues. The defense gives up a lot of points. We've seen good quarterbacks be on teams that have defenses that give up a lot of points, and they either match or they elevate the people around them. And that's kind of how you look at in all sports when you look at some of the leaders, whether it's basketball or whatever. The top players elevate the people around them, and they do more with less, and they're making it happen, and they're slinging it around. They're doing all this stuff. And I get Herbert can make some really good throws, and he has a really strong arm. But at some point, you are what you are. At some point, your record is what your record is. At some point, you are a part of the team that's doing the thing. And so I just don't know. I think if you took another quarterback and put him on this team, is this the best they're going to get? Is this the best version of the Chargers? Could they be better with a better quarterback? I don't know. I think it's really tough to say, because everybody's clamoring for the head coach to get fired. So I think there's still opportunity. He's only 25 years old. He's got plenty of time left to figure it out as a quarterback with the team. But it's like they spent a lot of money on him. They have a lot of aging assets, like Matt just said. And so I don't know. Like, is he just going to end up as a Phillip Rivers? Are the Chargers just going to have another Phillip Rivers on their hand where he's going to put up a lot of statistics? He's going to be really good. He's going to have them in somewhat playoff contention every now and again, and then they just won't get over the hump. Like, I just have a strong feeling that's where this is heading, just based on what we've seen so far out of this organization. They've just created.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree. I think you said it perfectly. I think that is what the Chargers are going to be for the foreseeable future, because I don't want to blame Justin Herbert necessarily, but those aging assets cannot be denied. Austin Eckler will not be on this team next year. Keenan Allen is 32 years old. Mike Williams.
31, yeah.
Yeah, Mike Williams is 29, 30, somewhere around there.
Doesn't matter how old he is. He's never on the field anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my point, is you have great wide receivers that aren't on the field because they're old and they're injury prone. Your first round rookie wide receiver has been a complete bust thus far. So he was supposed to be the saving grace that is kind of like the next gen to come in here and help with the wide receiver room. Where's he been? You know, it's a cascading effect where I think at best the Chargers are going to be kind of frisky some years and kind of meh some years. And I think that it's a lot of it has to do with the team makeup. And I don't think Brandon Staley will be around at the end of by the start of next year. He will be gone.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is we can speculate while we can, but we're not going to have to speculate for long, because soon we're going to see a Chargers team without Brandon Staley and see if it makes a big difference. So I guess we'll have to wait and see for that one.
Real quick question. More likely that Kellen Moore is elevated to head coach, or they go find somebody else? Because if you find somebody else, I think Kellen Moore might be gone. He might go find another job.
Perhaps. There's going to be quite a few potential openings, though, like in the NFL this season, I think, in this offseason. I mean, Panthers, we already know is one. I think Ron Rivera's gone. So the Commanders, do they elevate Eric Bieniemy? I think that's probably likely.
I can't believe they didn't fire Rivera this week, because obviously that's been kind of the source of conversation too. But if you are the front office or the owner of the Commanders, and you say, okay, we just picked up this new hotshot offensive coordinator, and we have this coach that we know is not going to be around for very long, why would you not get rid of him after the blowout loss to the Cowboys, elevate Bieniemy to interim head coach, and see what he can do? And then you have an elongated interview process where you can make that decision in an intelligent way. And instead, they're just like, we'll just keep riding and we'll pray that we make the right decision. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Because it's the Commanders, and that's what they do.
Mm-hmm. So they got new ownership now. I was optimistic.
No, well, yeah, and maybe they're hesitant to get their feet in the water, but the Raiders need a head coach, Panthers need a head coach, Commanders, I think it's probably going to be Eric Bieniemy, and I hope it is, but
Patriots will probably need one.
There. Patriots, and now you have the Chargers. I mean, that's at least 5, right?
I don't think the Patriots move from Belichick. I just really don't.
I think this is a strong possibility. We'll see. We'll see. I'm in the camp that they do. Arthur Smith is another potential contender, depending upon how they finish the season. So
I don't think he's going anywhere.
I think it depends on if they don't make the playoffs. I think it certainly becomes a possibility.
Yeah.
A sneaky one to throw in there real quick. You said before we talk about Arthur Smith.
Okay.
What about Sean McDermott with the Bills?
That's an interesting one too.
I think he's too good to let go. He's been pretty consistent over the course of his career. This last game was a tough look, but I really think you look at his career and you say, he's probably too good to get rid of right now.
He fired Ken Dorsey.
I was going to say, he already pulled the desperation move, is fire an assistant. That kind of tells you, that's like every coach's last life raft is fire an assistant. Yeah. Fire an assistant and see what happens.
And that's what I said. I said in our group chat, I said, you want to know what I want to know is how often does that actually work? Like I'm too lazy to go dig through all those stats to try and figure that out. But how often does firing an offensive or defensive coordinator save the career of whatever head coach? Because it's a scapegoat move 9 times out of 10. Like that, we know it, right? Like it's like they're not getting it done. We're going to get them out of here. And now my career, I've bought myself some time. But in reality, most of those coaches end up leaving anyway. So I would love to know the statistics behind it. One of you brainiacs out there, get to work and let me know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Arthur Smith, we can't get through an episode of the Leatherbrains Fantasy Football Podcast without talking shit on Arthur Smith a little bit.
Love it.
Do you think he finally learned his lesson? the win in this one. Desmond Ridder gave the ball away another 2 times, which he's just addicted to doing apparently. But they won this game because they dominated on the ground, right? Which has always been what they've said they want to do, but then they keep letting Ridder throw these interceptions and fumble the ball, like they're running pass plays on the 2-yard line and refuse to give the ball to Bijan Robinson in the red zone for some reason. But it seems like maybe they're slowly coming around here. Both Bijan and Algier had good games in terms of efficiency. Algier averaged 6.4 yards per carry and Bijan averaged 5.7 yards per carry. That's the reason they won this game. And, bad quarterback play can be difficult to overcome, but when you have a generational talent at running back, you have a good backup running back who's a great change of pace option. You have these weapons on the outside who, regardless of how often you're throwing the ball, you have to be able to cover Kyle Pitts. You have to be able to cover, why am I drawing a blank? Drake London. So defenses have to respect that, but then they also have to cover these crazy running backs. So for me, I'm hoping that Arthur Smith now is coming to the realization, hey, let's keep it real simple for our quarterbacks and let's give the ball to the people who are really, really good playmakers and we'll get some wins.
I think you're giving him too much regard and respect. I think that's the issue here. Bijan Robinson, this is his third highest, if you look at his games, he touched the ball 16 times, which is the third highest amount since he's began his NFL career. So I don't know why it's taken Arthur Smith this long to try and figure out, I do have Bijan Robinson. I keep forgetting we're a run-first team. What, I just don't get it. So I think he's an idiot. I think he doesn't know what he's doing. And he, like I said at the beginning, I think Arthur Smith belongs as a janitor on an NFL team. And the only thing that happened was he was the janitor for the Falcons and he walked in and he did the old drawing plays on the fucking chalkboard. And then somebody's like, this guy knows what he's doing. And they kept promoting him to the point where he got to head coach and he doesn't know how he got there. He doesn't deserve to be there. And he doesn't know what he's doing to make this team succeed. So he keeps stumbling his way into figuring out how to get things done. But I think he's a bad coach, and he's shitty, and he's ugly, and he's stupid, and I hate him.
Well,
good.
I was going to say, Matt, I'll let you go, but he is the 4 seed in the NFC playoffs right now. Mm-hmm. So
that's what makes it. That's what makes it tough. That's why I don't think.
Look at the NFC. Look at the NFC.
They'd be playing the Cowboys at home right now if the playoffs started right now.
Who wins that game?
The Falcons.
Pray tell me.
Depends on how many times Dak throws an interception. But I don't know. If they fired Arthur Smith today and they said, SlapDawg, you're the new head coach of the Falcons, the first change you're going to make is, okay, every single game, Bijan is touching the ball 25 times minimum.
Well, first thing I'm going to do is figure out anything Arthur Smith touched and burned it because I don't want his essence anywhere near the building.
Okay, the second thing you do is say, all right, we drafted Bijan Robinson, maybe one of the best running back prospects ever. He is going to be our offense. And it's crazy to me that hasn't been the conclusion of this coaching staff yet, where they're like, okay, Bijan, rather than giving you, 12 carries and a few passes, you are going to be our workhorse. You're going to get 18 carries and 5 or 6 targets through the air, and we'll see what happens. That's the first thing that you do. And I just don't understand how they haven't come to that conclusion yet. Maybe it's because they've won too much. They're winning too many games for him to say we need to change our system.
This is working great, guys. Let's keep doing it.
Yeah, we're only averaging 3 picks a game. What's the big deal? But yeah,
they don't have a quarterback. We know that, right? And we're beating a dead horse here. We know that the Falcons don't have a quarterback. Desmond Ridder is not the long-term solution here, and they desperately need to figure something out here in this offseason to make them competitive because their roster is pretty damn good. They have a good roster full of talented people. They just don't have a quarterback to get the ball in their playmakers' hands. So I don't know why they're not using Bijan as much because that would be a very clear indicator to me that if we can't throw the ball and get the ball in Drake London and Kyle Pitts and all these other people that we have on the team, if we cannot get the ball in their hands, maybe we just hand the ball off and run the ball and really set ourselves up in the run game because that's what the Falcons are historically known for or have been, for the last couple of years. So I don't understand why it's taken them so long to figure this out, but I do hope that the trend continues. I do hope that Bijan continues to see a lot of volume because the NFL needs more guys like him. They do. It's fun. It's electric. It makes the running game is boring when you're playing Madden. Nobody likes to run ISOs in Madden because you want to throw the ball because it's fun, it's electric, you have options. In the run game, it's you hand the ball off, you get 4 or 5 yards, you line up and you do it again. So in Madden, nobody wants to run the ball, but the reality is in the NFL, running the ball is a very, very important thing to do, and the Falcons can do it very well. They just need to give Bijan the ball, and I hope that trend continues.
Agreed.
That's it. That's all we got. Gentlemen, we have no questions today. So my last question to you boys is Monday Night Football predictions. We got the Bears and the Vikings. The Pastronaut versus... Is Justin Fields going to be back? I think Justin Fields is going to be back. So it's the Pastronaut versus Justin Fields. Who's winning this game today?
I got one thing. From
it.
a Vegas perspective. If the Vikings win and cover, it'll be the most teams in a single week that won against the spread. Most favorites that won against the spread in a single week with 13. They're sitting at 12 right now. So
you saying
bet
we
all the
should
favorites
money line the Vikings right now?
I would say take the spread on the Vikings, right? Meow. Take it. What is it, 3? I would take it. That's what I'm rooting for. Rooting for history, boys.
Yeah, I do think the
Love a
Vikings
good
are going to
history
win this
bet.
game. I think the ceiling for the Vikings and how well they can perform is much higher than the Bears. So obviously anyone can win this game. Neither of these teams are in their best form right now, but I think the Vikings are probably more likely to win. And also, my fantasy teams, I got Alexander Madison and I have got Jordan Addison on a bunch of them. So I really need the Vikings to go off.
Okay, so I have Alexander Madison as well, and I am going against Joshua Dobbs. So we'll say a bunch of sweeps to Jordan Addison for a couple touchdowns, and Alexander Madison's going to have the rest. How's that sound?
That sounds perfect. I'm in for
Well,
that.
50 yards for the Pastronaut. I'm taking the Vikings on this one. I think the Vikings will probably win this. And that's my guess. So
We're
we're
all
all
on the
going
same page.
Vikings?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right. Boys, that's all the time we have today. Appreciate you guys doing this. This was fun. We will do it again next Monday. So everybody tune in, hit subscribe, leave us a rating, and we appreciate it. And let's go. We
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out leatherbrains.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.